Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. It's Friday. My hair's crazy. I need to get a haircut. I think that's going to happen this weekend. Getting a haircut on the list. Crazy hair day. I taught a class, redeem your promote coupon to get more. Good morning. Um, try now. Yeah, all right. All right. I don't know. I don't know I don't know what's going on here. Good morning to you. I taught a class last night. It went pretty well on spiritual self defense, which is a topic I like to talk about. I have this sort of weird. Um, I mean, we all have this to some extent, but I have this weird intersection of education and career and that sort of thing where um, I studied martial arts and taught self defense for decades, for many, many years. And I taught self defense, physical self defense, all over. I used to have a business where I taught, and I taught at places like Harvard Medical School, and I taught at law firms and insurance companies and all kinds of stuff. Um, oh, thank you for your recommendation for the Sedona method. My book is still on order, but I've been watching YouTube videos on it. Cool, cool. Yeah, there's I think there's a video called Letting Go or something like that with Hale Dwoskin, who's the author of the book that goes through a lot of the methods from the Sedona Method book. I don't know if it's free or if it costs like $10 or whatever it is, but it's also something to check out. But yeah, there's lots of stuff on YouTube about the Sedona Method, which is something I recommended at some point. um, so anyway, I taught self defense for many years. I taught like I play the variety of places I taught was pretty cool and interesting. I taught at Harvard Medical School, and I also taught at a shelter for pregnant teens. I taught, privately. I had private clients and all that sort of thing. So that I have that background. And then in my tech career, I wound up getting a master's degree in information security. So I have that, a lot of sort of risk management and technology and that sort of thing in there. And then, obviously, I'm a very spiritual person, and I have studied lots of things in the realm of spirituality, and so I sort of combine those things and talk a lot about. And I've taught classes before in shamanic self defense using shamanic tools for spiritual defense. Not the topic for today, but it was a class I taught last night was spiritual self defense, and I talked about grounding and centering and shielding and some of the basics. It was an hour-long class. So, but I love teaching, so it's my favorite thing to do. It's what I've built a lot of my life and career around is teaching. I teach a lot of students one-on-one and through mentoring, but I also teach classes. Today we're gonna so this is actually my third live this week. Um, I don't know. I'm in a live mood this week, and I've had time to do them. And the last one I talked a lot about mysticism, and I talked about what it was. And I'm going to go through a little bit of that again today, staying kind of on that same topic. It's not something I do a whole lot of, where I do like I'm going to talk about one thing multiple times in a row. I guess that's my ADHD kind of kicking in, that I want to talk about different things almost each time that I do it. But I wanted to stay on the topic of mysticism, and I'm going to talk today about modern mysticism. And the reason I want to talk about that, not that there's not a difference necessarily in the practices of mysticism from or what the word means. And there's some change over thousands of years. But how does it fit into our modern lives? Why might we who are living in the information age and you know, this fast-paced post-capitalist world, what is it that we're what is it that we're doing? What is it that we're getting out of mysticism if it's something that we choose to look at? And so that's something I'm going to present today. The other thing I'm kicking around, and I'm gonna seek feedback on this. Uh, that over the next couple of months, probably uh, fingers crossed. I think I did okay. I'm completing some work to become ordained as a metaphysical minister. So, metaphysical minister, not sectarian, not like a Christian minister, that sort of thing, but having some recognized authority with a metaphysical body to conduct services and ceremonies and things like that. And I'm thinking about doing sort of it would be similar to this actually, but doing live ministry. And I've been in touch with other people who are in the same sort of organization and that sort of thing, and talked about, hey, maybe we could get some people together and do live things together, and there seems to be some traction there. So maybe coming up, and I'll be looking for input on that from people who may be interested in that. It would be like a service that you could attend with groups of people and that sort of thing, but not a specifically religious orientation, but it would be spiritual and uplifting and have messages and practices and meditations. Okay. So, good question. So, there's a question here. What would you say is the difference between mysticism, spirituality, and I'll say esotericism or the esoteric? Um, So this is a very good question. So my definition of spirituality, and maybe that doesn't agree with everyone else's definition. I know it doesn't agree with everyone else's definition of spirituality, but my definition of spirituality is practices or anything that we do that helps us feel connected to something greater than ourselves. So for some people, that might be going to church, praying, fasting, whatever it is that they do that is spiritual practice. It makes them feel connected. It helps them connect to that which is greater than themselves. And it encompasses a great deal of activity, right? Um, Mysticism is about is a type of spiritual practice. But in mysticism, the goal is to align or merge your consciousness with the higher being, with higher power, with God or the source or the universe. So mysticism is a sliver of spiritual activity, spiritual practice. And mysticism, as a broad definition of activities, is exists in many different forms of spirituality, but it tends to be the smaller part of spirituality, right? So mysticism, meaning that people going to church on Sunday generally are not practicing mysticism, right? They go to church, they say the prayers, they sing the songs, they put money in the collection plate, and then they go home. Right? It is not necessarily depends on the church that you go to. There are mystical mys, mysticism tends to be esoteric, and I'll talk about esotericism in a moment, but it tends to be for the initiated, for the inner circle, when it is allied with a specific religious body. Okay. So that's mysticism. Esoteric or esotericism or the esoteric means the inner teachings, right? So the inner teachings, which might include mysticism. So in the past, well, not in the past, even today, You have esoteric and exoteric. Exoteric means the outer teachings. So in we'll take Christianity, for example. I, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but 99.99999% of people who identify as Christian, who study the Bible, are studying the exoteric side of it. They are not learning the metaphysical or mystical meanings behind the things they're reading in the Bible or behind the practice. And in fact, there's a loud minority of people who read the Bible as like literal history. The people that believe the earth is 6,000 years old and that, you know, all of those things. And it was never, that was the that was an exoteric teaching, right? This is just history. This is just what happened, and take everything literally. Um, and the esoteric teaching, even if you follow the words of, the words that are attributed to Jesus in the Bible, there's a lot of stuff where he's talking about this teaching is for, he's talking to the apostles, this is teaching for you. This is not for the the other people who don't understand. He who hath eyes to see, don't cast pearls before swine, all of these things. That is clearly, and there are many, many passages like this, clearly defining a boundary between the exoteric and the esoteric. Which brings me to today, to talking about modern mysticism, and I can pull modern esotericism in with that. Um, so again, before esoteric teachings and mysticism, which comes from the mystery schools of Greece, and prior to that, probably the mystery schools of Egypt, was for an elite, inner initiated few. It doesn't in the modern world, it doesn't have to be that way, right? And so mysticism can become less esoteric, meaning mysticism can be available to a much broader people. You can right now go out and study tantra, for example, if that's your thing, right? You can study tantric Buddhism, you can study tantric yoga. I'm not just talking about the sex practices, which are a part of it, but there's a broad group of things that are very mystical, right? It's about elevating the energy in the body to have Shiva and Shakti merge in the higher chakras, right? The masculine and the feminine principle. This exists in Christianity and Judaism and Islam and Buddhism. This idea spoken about in different language and using different stories, right? It's important. And if you read the Christian Bible, Jesus taught through parable. He taught through stories. So what makes us think that the rest of the Bible isn't meant to be parable and to have many levels, deeper levels of meaning? I'm not saying you have to read the Bible, and I'm not saying you need to be Christian or any of those things. I'm just saying, like, this exists, and now it's becoming, in our modern age, it's becoming more and more available to people. You can um you know in the past, it has been true in the Christian world that most people were not literate, and reading the Bible as a non-clergy person would get you in trouble with the law. It was illegal. You certainly couldn't own one unless you were very wealthy. Right now, I can go on Amazon and I can buy, I don't know, 300 versions of the Bible. I can buy illustrated versions and, all of these things. So we have these things available to us. So we can be modern mystics if we so choose. If you choose, if that's your path. If it's not your path, it's not your path. It's totally fine. There's no judgment on my part, right? I'm not saying one way is better than the other. But what I am saying is that mysticism offers the spiritual a very deep path, or many paths actually, back to our true self. Our true self at the core of us is our connection, our divine spark, our connection to source, our connection to the divine, God, whatever term you want to use. Sometimes I say this frequently, but sometimes I avoid the word God because there is so much baggage placed upon that name or title. I don't know if you would consider God. Some places spell God with a lowercase g and some with an uppercase G. So is it even a proper noun? Is it even, is God the name of God? Probably not. Um, there's a whole thing in Judaism about the names of God and the true name of God that can only be sort of hinted at. um, that sort of thing. In fact, there in Hebrew, that will often say people who are extremely orthodox, for example, will say Hashem, and Hashem means name. So you're basically saying name because I can't utter your name because that would be blasphemy. Um, so, uh, but mysticism for the modern world, and my dog's coming over to say hi. You want to come say hi? Hey, come here. Come here. No, she's just gonna stare at me. You're just gonna stare at me. What's going on? You don't want to come say hi? Hi. You want to come up? You want to come see? You want to come say hello? She's like, nope. Gonna be camera shy today. She showed up during my last live. She decided to jump up and make her presence known, but not today. So I hope that answers your question about the difference between mysticism, spirituality in general, and the esoteric. Those are they're all very broad terms. So there's a lot of overlap there. I would say more between esotericism and mysticism, but not all esoteric teachings are mystical, right? Not all of them are meant to elevate consciousness to merge or align with the divine. So not all esotericism is mysticism, and not all mysticism is esoteric. But there is a big overlap on a Venn diagram if we were to draw one, and spirituality would encircle all of those, so it would contain those things. Maybe I'll draw a Venn diagram and publish it. That would work, right? Um, I've got tools for that. I've got tech tools for that. I'm nerdy. I can draw a Venn diagram. So if we had a Venn diagram, see if I can draw it out real quick. Such a good question. Thank you for that. Du-du-du-du. We had a Venn diagram. This is what it would look like. The big circle would be spirituality. One of the small circles would be esoteric teachings or esotericism, and another one would be mysticism. And you can see that they overlap in the middle, creating what's called a vesica piscis. The fish, you see the fish symbol from Christianity there? Um, I'll hold it up over here. I'm on TikTok over here, and Facebook and YouTube over here, and X. I guess people are tuning in on X as well, and on Twitch. Welcome if you're my Twitch viewer who tunes in via Twitch. Um, so I hope that's helpful, but feel free to ask me more questions. So when we think of the mystical or mysticism, um, often, well, we might not think of it this way. Depends on when you grew up and the media that you were exposed to, right? Like, I was born in the 70s and really grew up in the 80s and 90s. And when I thought of mystical, I thought of, like, Dungeons and Dragons and wizards and all of that sort of thing. And there's some truth to that, right? Um, but the word the word mystery, mysticism, mystical, those words, they come from the mystery traditions of ancient Greece, right? The word itself comes from the Greek word. And there were these what they call mystery schools. And you would go The most famous one is at Eleusis, but there were many of these things. And the mystery school of Eleusis lasted for over 1,000 years. Now imagine a set of religious rites that lasted unchanged for 1,000 years. And you might say, well, Christianity is older than 1,000 years, and Judaism and Buddhism. Sure. But have been big changes to those things over the years, right? Um, in Judaism, for example, I didn't realize this until recently, but the bat mitzvah, you'd have bar mitzvahs for boys, but the bat mitzvah has only existed since like the 40s or 50s, 1940s or 1950s. So it's really new. And so there's a lot, and you have, reform. I have a good friend who is a rabbi who's female. Like that hasn't happened. That is, so there's a lot of things that change in a tradition. My apologies. This is really weird. I know. I got to step away for a second because my dog needs to go out. She always decides she needs to go out right in the middle of when I'm talking. But hang on, I will be right back. I promise. All right. Wait, stop. There you go. Enjoy. All right. All right. Coming back. Coming back. Good thing. Good thing I wore pants today. Just kidding. I normally wear pants on. It's not always. That'll be my secret though. Can you imagine a well, I can, but I'm a little bit unorthodox. So anyway, so these things have changed. So these mystery schools, the most famous being at Eleusis, and what would happen, we don't fully know because they were mystery schools. They were open. You would go and participate in ritual. You would drink a psychedelic brew called kaikon, which was, we think, beer infested with the ergot fungus. If you happen to know, the ergot fungus is the precursor to LSD. So these people would trip, and then they would participate in some sort of theater in which people were playing the gods and goddesses and going through the stories from mythology. And so people would be like experiencing this. They would be trying to merge into the current of the gods and goddesses by participating in these things. And the writings of the time were about how life transforming these experiences were, right? And again, they lasted until Christianity sort of wiped the pagans from the map. But you know, it's recorded that tens of thousands of people every year would go through these rituals for 1,000 years. It's pretty significant. Like, people wouldn't do that, I don't think, just to get high or whatever. They had to have had extremely profound transformative experiences, and that's written about. We don't know exactly what happened, but they were indoors in a cave-like setting, and lots of things that would alter consciousness, that would raise consciousness and allow people to commune with their deities, right? And so this happened in lots of places in Greece. Again, the most famous one was Eleusis. And so the first time you went, you got initiated in, and there was sort of two levels of initiation. You would go through the first level, and then you would return and go through it again, and then you were considered fully initiated. I don't know if you were required to pay to do this, if it was only available to elites, or if it was available to everyone, or I should probably read up about it and find out as much as I can. But again, these are the mystery schools. There were also mystery schools in Egypt, and probably the Greek mystery schools borrowed from the Egyptians. They were probably beer was also very, very important to the Egyptians because the Nile water wasn't safe to drink. So they brewed a heck of a lot of beer in ancient Egypt and drank it. And they also made wine that they infused with blue lotus flowers. And blue lotus flowers are actually lilies, but they carry psychoactive properties. In fact, I am currently infusing some wine with blue lotus flowers. I have not tried it yet. It is not where I live. It is not illegal to do that. It's not illegal to possess, make, or process that. But they have psychoactive properties that they use in ritual, which is how I will use it when it's ready. And I'll be right back again. I got to let the dog in. She's been out. Now she needs to come in. Here, girl. All right, back. I'm back. Sorry about that. One of these days, I'll figure this out and try to get the dog to go out before I talk. But I think she waits, and um, she's still she's still kind of a puppy. She's just over a year old, and she likes attention. Who doesn't? We all like attention, right? Um, so I was talking about the mystery schools, the Blue Lotus wine drinking. We have pictures of it in temples. People going crazy. It doesn't make it crazy, but it has effects. It has an effect according to people I have heard from. It has an effect that is similar to MDMA. I've never taken MDMA. I don't do anything illegal. Um, I am not against plant medicines for sure. Good morning. Good morning to you. We're talking about mysticism this morning, so again, like I'm continuing. I talked about mysticism last time. I'm talking about mysticism today, but specifically talking about what place it might take, or what part it might play in our modern world, right? Modern mysticism. So you can certainly go to retreats and things and take entheogens, right? You can go to an ayahuasca retreat. I have seen things online, people offering therapy with psilocybin. You can get access to ketamine therapy, at least in the US. Currently, you can, it's off label, but you can, and ketamine is not particularly psychedelic or entheogenic. It is dissociative, and it can make you hallucinate a little bit. But so there's a lot of research going on with, and ketamine's an art, a synthetic drug. It's not plant medicine. Regardless, so you can go and have these experiences, and a lot of people are doing this because um, for one, I think a lot of people are doing this to take shortcuts. There's nothing wrong with it. I am not one to judge at all. Whatever you feel like you need to do, and particularly people who have any sort of mental health concern. You know, in my worst depression in my life, I would have done anything to get out of that. Right? Depression sucks. And if you've never experienced major depressive disorder, good. I am so happy for you. But I will tell you, you don't know what it's like. It is physically painful. It's not just feeling sad. It's not being down in the dumps. Imagine just imagine having symptoms of the flu other than fever, right? Because in people with major depressive disorder, you can draw their blood and they will have the same exact C-reactive proteins in their blood as people with the flu. So imagine, remember the last time you had the flu and you could not move, you couldn't feel like getting out of bed. Beyond you wanted to socially isolate. Beyond that, um, you have aches and pains in your body. You might have problems with food. You might all kinds of things, right? That's depression. It's not just feeling sad. Okay. Feeling sad comes with it. Feeling down in the dumps, feeling unmotivated, feeling like you have let your family and friends down. All of those things come with it. Yeah. So anxiety, yes. Anxiety sucks. And again, many people don't understand. Like I've heard people say, well, just, snap out of it or think happy thoughts or whatever. Yeah, it's depression's pretty miserable. Yeah. Yes, for sure. Um, so what not to go too far down the path of mental health stuff, but I'm happy to talk about my own experiences um because I'm managing, because I'm doing fairly well. And I always tell people I'm not special and I'm not smarter than you are. And I'm not wealthy and I'm not, like, I don't have anything going for me that anybody else doesn't have. I'm a pretty smart guy. I've gotten a lot of education, but that doesn't help. Right. But what I do have is this sort of tenacity. Like I'm going to figure out a way to get through this. And so if I can do this and I can thrive and be okay and help others and teach others, so can anybody else. That's it. I'm not saying in any way that anything you're struggling with isn't real or the struggle isn't real or that can just snap out of it or that it's easy. That is the last thing that I'm saying. It is not easy. Um but I understand that firsthand. There's no shame and there's no judgment on my part. All I'm doing is saying, look, I went through a really serious period of time in my life where I almost didn't make it. My physical body was not dealing well with the uh, depression symptoms. I lost something like 60 pounds practically overnight, which is funny. It was really unhealthy. And my doctor's like, don't lose any more weight for the love of God. And everybody was coming up to me like, dude, you look great. What are you doing? What's your secret? My secret is major depressive disorder. I don't recommend it as a diet. Um, so yeah, absolutely, absolutely miserable, and I am not anymore. Is it something that you know, is it something that I can say is never on my mind or, that I'm cured? I don't have, um, no, I probably will never say that. I have to keep on top of it. I have to keep on top of my mental health. And my spiritual practice is a really big part of that. And I do believe that is something that mysticism can offer us in this day and age, right? It can offer us a chance to step outside of our limited concept of ourself, our limited consciousness of ourself, and realize that we have all of the resources of the universe at our disposal. We just need to align with them, right? We have all, the trillions of galaxies in the universe, and each one of them has billions of stars. That's a lot of stuff out there at our disposal. It's a lot of resources, a lot of energy, a lot of things at our disposal. But it takes some work to get there. It takes hard work. It's not simple. It isn't the easiest thing in the world. Why? Because we've created these egos that separate us from that. So in our modern world, we can't necessarily our lives, some people do this, but our lives are not monastic for most of us, right? We don't live in a monastery situation where we can just focus on a spiritual practice 24/7. We don't have you know cloisters or whatever you had in the past. We don't have that. stuff for most people. It still exists, but very, very small communities, kind of thing. But we have our own, we have our own homes, and we have our lives, and we have jobs, and we have things that we deal with, but we don't struggle for survival necessarily as much as our ancestors did, right? So maybe we've got some free resources. And by resources, I mean time and attention. We've got some free time and we've got some attention. And I know, like, this world and our ego wants to fool us into thinking that we don't have time for spiritual practice or self-care. Oh my gosh, I'm so busy. That is the modern thing, right? I'm so busy. I don't have time for this. Um, you know, and I love a good binge watch, but somebody who doesn't have time to meditate, many people find, 5 hours to binge watch a show on Netflix or, something. And I get it. It's escapism. It gives us dopamine. It makes us feel good. It gives us that temporary reprieve from our lives, which might be hard, right? And spirituality can also become escapism, right? Um, in a way, if we're not actually doing the work, oh, I'm gonna go to retreat after retreat after retreat, or take class after class after class, or do this or do that. And I'm not gonna do my practice, and I'm not gonna do my work. I'm gonna read spiritual books, but never do the practice. Spiritual practice, if you're doing it correctly, is hard work. It can be hard work. That doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable. That doesn't mean that it doesn't make you feel good. Doesn't mean that. It just means it takes effort. It takes a lot of effort. Is it worth it? I think so. It's up to you to decide if it's worth it for you and how much time you want to dedicate to your spiritual practice. I recommend a daily spiritual practice in whatever way that makes sense for you. Meditate, journey, pray, read, practice tai chi, whatever works for you. I'm not prescribing any kind of path. I can only talk about what works for me. So, um, let's get into a little bit. Let's get into how we might practice mysticism as modern people these days. So again, it's not it's not reasonable for most of us to go live in a cave somewhere, right? It's funny. Stories, the old stories. Bodhidharma, who is the guy who brought Buddhism to China from India, right? Bodhidharma goes to China and goes and sits in a cave for 9 years and meditates facing a wall for 9 years. Okay, that's a good story. Did it actually happen? I don't know. Maybe. Um, but what they don't tell you is, like, how did this person support himself facing a wall in a cave for 9 years? Like, clearly, biologically, he wasn't walled up in the cave. Somebody had to bring him food. He had to use the restroom, whatever that was. Did he not clean himself for 9 years? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But there's all this practical stuff. How did this occur? We're gonna hear about that. Right. So, maybe someday I'll be independently wealthy and can have this. Probably will never happen. Most likely will never happen. Not on my current path. And have people bring me food and things, and I can just spend all day in meditation. I probably still would not do that. It's not reasonable for a modern person to follow sort of that example. You can go to retreats. You can do a silent retreat for 7 days or a month if you have the means. Most of us don't have the means to do that. Most of us have to work, make a living, maybe you save up, maybe you take a vacation, but then you have to re-enter the world. So what does mystical practice offer us on kind of a day-to-day basis? For one, it offers spiritual progression. There is this there is an idea out there that, I'm being spiritual. I meditate every day. That's great. I'm glad. It's a very good thing to do. It's a very healthy thing to do. There's lots of research out there. You find thousands of studies about meditation and its effect on things like blood pressure and mental health and that sort of thing. It's a healthy activity. Like, brushing your teeth. You should be brushing your teeth. You should be flossing. Gotta floss. Um, do all of those things, right? Um, sorry. Sorry, just had a message come up I had to check on really quick. Um, so what, you know, assuming we want to we're intrigued or whatever, we want to do what does that offer us on a day-to-day basis? I'll give you some of my thoughts about it. What does it do for me? For one, it allows me to live my life in a much smoother way. Now, this doesn't mean I don't run into obstacles in my life. It doesn't mean crazy things don't happen, or my girlfriend breaks up with me, or it doesn't mean any of those things. But what it means is that I can handle them, and it's much smoother. But also, there are a lot of people interested in things like manifestation and magic and law of attraction and that sort of thing. And mystical practice makes all of those things work, right? So if there's something you want to happen in your life, you need to that that is coming from a source. One of the things that in all of everything I've ever read about law of attraction doesn't talk about where the things you're trying to manifest, where do they come from, right? I'm going to sit and do, practice law of attraction for a new job or a new romantic partner or a new car, whatever it is you want to manifest. Where does that come from? Where does everything come from? Everything comes from source. So, one benefit of aligning yourself with source, of taking on source consciousness, of merging with the mind of God that is within you already, is that manifestation happens easier because that is your source. That's where everything emanates from. So that is one thing, one benefit, one reason for practicing mysticism in today's modern world. Another one is just straight up insight, right? Mystical insights to gain truth about the reality of the world. Now, I have always had, ever as long as I can remember, I've always been a curious individual. That has helped me out a lot. I want to know everything about everything. In fact, my mother will tell you, and young people these days, I'm starting to sound like my grandfather. Young people these days might not understand this, but when I was a kid, we didn't have Wikipedia. We had these things called encyclopedias, if your parents had them or they were in the library. And we had like three sets of encyclopedias. I don't know where they came from. And they were books, and they took up, multiple shelves on our bookshelves at my home. And they were cataloged from A to Z. So if you wanted to find out about gorillas, you pulled down the one that had G in it, and you would, thumb through till you find an article about gorillas and learn about gorillas that way. The problem, obviously, with things like that in books is that they're not updated. They go out of, but so I would ask my mother to read from the encyclopedia for me I'd go to bed. That's how much of a nerd I was. Still am. Um, when I was in a really bad situation, I turned to mystical practice and had the most profound experience of my life. Yes, absolutely. My life is better now, but it's hard to have the discipline to regularly practice. Yeah, so it does take discipline and commitment to have regular practice. That can be challenging. One way to build, I'll give some tips on how to build habit. Yeah, why? Yes. Any advice or thoughts on why it's hard to take up regular practices? Um, yes, this is a fantastic question, and so I'm gonna put my coaching hat on for a moment and talk about why building new habits is difficult. And so, what we're really talking about with taking on practices and doing them regularly is building habits. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the biggest reason I can answer for the simplest overarching reason I can give you is homeostasis. Human beings are designed to keep things operating the same way, physically, mentally, whatever. It can be hard to overcome old habits. It can be hard to install new habits. There are some keys to building new habits. I'll give you a few of those. And these are borne out by psychological research. So, and this works for anything you want to do. If you want to take up running or take up whatever you want to do on a day-to-day basis, you want to make some choices and make healthy habits. Here are some hints for doing that. One is to start small, right? So if I haven't gone to the gym in 10 years and I go to the gym tomorrow and I spend 3 hours bench pressing, I can't even imagine that. I spend 3 hours lifting weights at the gym tomorrow and I haven't been to the gym in forever. Um, I'm going to have a really hard time at that. And I'm probably going to physically hurt myself. And I'm probably not going to go back to the gym. So that's the end of that habit. It lasted a day. Okay, so that's number one. Start with small things. If you want to start a spiritual practice, start with 5 minutes of meditation. Everybody has 5 minutes, right? And if you feel resistance or you feel you're making excuses, ask yourself why and figure out if that's really an excuse. So that's hint number one, is to start small, build from there. If you can start a meditation practice with 5 minutes, add a minute every week until you're up to half an hour or an hour, whatever works for you. That's hint number one. Hint number two is link. So you probably have habits, you probably have things you do every day. I make coffee every day. I brush my teeth every day. So what new habit do you want? Spiritual practice of some sort, meditation, prayer, tai chi, whatever you want to do. So link that to another habit. So if I say every morning I brush my teeth, I hope you brush your teeth every morning. You should be brushing your teeth twice a day and flossing. Um, I brush my teeth in the morning. When I conclude brushing my teeth, I sit down on my meditation mat and I spend 5 minutes in meditation. So the one habit is linked to something I already habitually do. Okay, that's a hint number two. Hint number three is to reduce resistance as much as possible. What is resistance? Resistance is anything that gets in our way, right? And resistance is I'll give you some examples and it will make it clear. But resistance, even just a little bit of resistance, can make a huge difference to actually doing something that we want to do, like taking up a spiritual practice. So an example of resistance, there was a great research study that showed that looked at people going to the gym, right? A lot of people want to get in shape. A lot of people want to go to the gym. People who lived within 3 miles of their gym worked out at a much higher rate of people that lived within 5 miles of their gym. You might ask yourself, what difference does 2 miles make if I'm driving to the gym? An extra 5 minutes drive in the morning. It made a huge difference. So I was listening, actually, I can't remember if it was a podcast or a radio show. I think it was a radio show. And they were talking to this psychologist who was studying habit making, right? And one of the things she said was, I wanted to run a marathon. So I wanted to take up running, and I decided that I'm going to run in the morning. And so she said, this might sound weird, but I slept in my running clothes. So that when I got up in the morning, all I had to do was put my sneakers on and go out the door, right? Reducing resistance. She didn't have to get up and change. And oh, while I'm changing, I'm going to make coffee. Our minds, as human beings, we're still cavemen, basically, right? We are designed to conserve energy. That's why a lot of people have trouble with weight loss. Our bodies are designed to, like, if we feed it a lot of calories, it's going to get stored away because famine is coming, feast and famine, right? Our bodies are designed to be homeostatic. Our minds are designed to be homeostatic. Any level of resistance will, I don't feel like meditating today. I'm just going to meditate tomorrow. So if your new spiritual habit, your new spiritual practice is meditation or something, what do you need to have in place to reduce resistance? Do you put your meditation mat away every day? Maybe you can leave it out in front of an altar or somewhere that you can just, I finished brushing my teeth. Now I'm just going to go sit down for 5 minutes, and I've got a timer, meditation timer on my phone, or, a separate alarm or something like that, and take my 5 minutes, right? So these things are, they sound really simple, and they are, and they should be, but they're incredible tools for building a regular practice. The first thing is, you got to decide on what your regular practice is going to be, right? I'm going to spend, 10 minutes meditating, or half an hour, or whatever. Start small and build up. Number one. Number two, link it to another habit that you already have. So when I brush my teeth in the morning and at night, immediately when I finish, I sit down on my cushion and close my eyes and meditate, right? What is it that you do every day? What is a habit that you already have? Link it to that. And the third, reduce resistance, whatever that means. Anything that gets in your way from doing the new habit is, reduce or eliminate that if you can. It's not possible to reduce 100% of resistance, but we can make strides towards that. So right now, I still meditate every day, but my meditation cushion, I have a whole seating, whole Zen seating meditation setup, is not in a very accessible place for me. So if I wanted to use that cushion again, I would bring that up and set it up, probably in my bedroom, so that when I get up in the morning and I go into the bathroom and brush my teeth, when I come out, I just sit and meditate. You know, maybe I put it in front of the window facing the sunrise so I can meditate facing the sunrise. I don't know. But that's my advice for taking on, and I realize you asked why it's hard to take up a regular practice. Um, and again, like your description of pushing through it makes sense to me. Like, it can feel that way for sure. um Instead of pushing it to the back burner, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, or it might not seem important or critical, and other things get in the way, and there are a lot of things competing for our attention these days. So this is another really good example of why um mystical practice, spiritual practice, is good for us, in this modern age is that there are, we've got social media, we've got YouTube, we've got streaming video. I can watch practically any movie ever made. I can walk into my living room right now and distract myself, sit down, zone out, if I had one, grab a bag of chips and zone out and watch TV and movies all day instead of doing my practice. That's not a judgment on my part if you do that. It's not a judgment. That is easy. That is the way our modern lives has been set up by capitalism. I'm not saying all capitalism is wrong or, whatever. I'm just saying this is the way people have figured out that your attention is economically valuable and are taking advantage of that. Social media is designed for really short dopamine hits all through the day, right? Once you get into doing regular meditation, though, like it feels so good. I'm assuming meditation is your chosen practice. It could be something else, and that's fine too. Again, I'm not telling you what or how to practice. Could be prayer. Meditative prayer is great too. I didn't used to love prayer a whole lot. Um, until I started studying metaphysics and learning better ways to pray. This whole sort of begging deity for things or groveling in front of deity or whatever that is. And then I started studying um with the metaphysical ministry, and the way they teach prayer is to first of all to pray inwardly to the inward dwelling god mind, but also to affirm the things that affirm things in prayer. So the prayer is more like an affirmation than um you know I'm weak and unworthy, please save me from myself. I don't know, whatever the prayers I was exposed to as a kid. I do like I do like things like the Lord's Prayer, and I think there is one of these days I'll pull out. There's a mystical version of the Lord's Prayer, or I'd say metaphysical version of the Lord's Prayer, which prays to our Father, Mother, who art in heaven. Um, Thine will be done as it is in heaven. You know, blah, blah, blah. I'm mixing up the words of the Lord's Prayer. I won't butcher it here, but there's a metaphysical version of that, and I think it's really beautiful because the metaphysical view is that we are not separate from divinity. We are a part of divinity. Everything is a part of divinity. There is nothing without it. Divinity is all there is. That includes us. We are individualized consciousness, and so we often feel like our ego makes us feel separate from that. And this is the main point. The main point of mystical practice is to understand at a very deep level and to experience that we are not separate from that we are one with that. I did a talk not that long ago on mystical interpretation of original sin, in which I said I think the story of the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve are getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden for gaining knowledge, is about the creation of the ego as separate beings, feeling separate from God. Right? You're bad, you're evil, you're separate from God, feeling that way when that is not true. There's a pathway back. We call it it's called very frequently referred to as the fall, right? And we have fallen angels and we have fallen people, and the fall is just misunderstanding, which is one of the definitions of sin. Definition of sin is misunderstanding or missing the mark. It's not offending the all pervasive. How can you offend an omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient being? Right? I'm really offended. I'm really jealous. Like, Anthropomorphizing deity is has its drawbacks, right? We get um I don't want to get too far down that path. I'm almost at the end of my discussion here. I've almost been talking for an hour. I do want to thank everybody for joining this morning, and I hope that I've given some interesting, helpful information. If you are not, don't forget to subscribe here, so that you can be informed when I go live in the future, which will be fairly frequently. But like I said, I'm contemplating starting like a regular service that would be, something that was scheduled. It would be like church but not church, for people who are interested in gathering in community and doing meditation and prayer together and that sort of thing. So um, stay tuned if that interests you at all. If not, that's totally fine too. I will continue to do these. That would be more like a once a week kind of thing. And I will probably pair up with some other metaphysical ministers that I'm connected to do that. I have not, I'll say this, I've not been ordained yet. I have just completed my big examination. It takes something like 6 weeks for them to go through that and figure out, and then I have to take vows and do all kinds of stuff. So it'll be off in the future. Oh, you like that idea? That's excellent. Good, good. Glad you like that idea. I'm sure I will do more polling to gauge interest in that going forward in the future. But it'd be something similar to this. It might be done. It might be done over a different medium, like Zoom or something, because there may be discussion involved. So, but we'll see. We'll see. We could do it over Zoom and then potentially post it to YouTube and that sort of thing. I don't know. It's just a really nascent idea, and most of my ideas come from uh, come from inspiration. I get inspired from spirit. I give credit to spirit for any ideas that I have, really, or anything good that happens. So, with that, I will give you one little piece of mystical metaphysical practice that you can do during the day. Um, you can try this whenever. It doesn't have to be a formal practice. So throughout your day, whenever you think about it, if you choose to do this, practice being not the doer. Be not the doer. So take the position that is not you, but the divine that is doing whatever it is that you would normally perceive yourself as doing. The divine is running this body, it's running this mind, and you are the observer. Okay. And again, it's important to do this during your normal activity. It's super easy or much easier to do this if you are sitting in meditation, right? Because the mind's not getting pulled all over the place. But do this while you're talking to people. Step out of the way and let the divine work through you. There's no real secret to it. It is an intention. Have the intention of stepping out of the way and letting the divine work through you. Let God, divine, source, whatever term you want to put on it, work through you. Be not the doer, right? Allow the divine, which is the reality of what's happening anyway, to be the doer. You will find that your interactions with other people um, become inspirited. You will take on a healing presence around others. Your day will run smoother. Um, Lots of beautiful things will happen. I promise. Takes practice. Our ego is really strong. Our ego wants to go, no, it's me. It's me doing all of this stuff. Don't let go of me. I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you alive. The ego is a friend, but the ego is also a liar. And that's its biggest lie. Its biggest lie is if you let go of me, you will die. You will cease to exist. So it starts by taking on observer consciousness. Just watch and allow. Just watch and allow. With that, I am going to end for the day. I've got to start my day, got things to do. Um, finish my coffee. I will be in deep meditation practice very soon. Maybe I'll see some of you there. Um, but again, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all of that stuff if you want to be informed when these things come up in the future or when I do other things. I've got lots of stuff up on YouTube. Um, but I do these lives pretty regularly as well. I'm starting to do them a little bit more. With that, I will leave you all. Take care. My love to you all. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great weekend. Um, do something for you this week.